What actually makes a home respectable? Is it wealth, luxury, expensive furniture, or is it something more subtle than that? We've all walked into homes that should have impressed us with the large rooms, intricate architecture, and designer furniture, and still something felt incomplete. That's not to say that the home was dirty or unfinished, it just seemed uncared for. Then there's the opposite experience, a modest home that wasn't trying to impress anyone, but you quickly felt accommodated. The lighting is nicely placed, the wood had been cared for, you can tell that the guest bathroom was ready for company. Someone had taken responsibility for the place. And because of that, it felt more respectable than homes costing several times as much. My name is Chaudhry, and today I'm sharing with you 5 pieces of evidence that consistently separate respectable homes. If you're a returning subscriber, hit the thumbs up. If you're new here, hopefully by the end of this video, you'll be a subscriber. Remember that if you would like our help in designing your room, you can have that help by clicking the link in the description below. You find a lot of confusion, possibly misconception, that impressive, beautiful, and respectable homes are always one and the same. They're not. An impressive home is designed to produce admiration. A beautiful home is assembled with aesthetic sensitivity, but a respectable home is maintained according to recognizable standards of care, readiness, dignity, and stewardship. It's an entirely different standard. In fact, a person can have a very respectable home which may never qualify to appear in a magazine. That qualification being designer furniture and areas like a dramatic entryway. Yet people still leave thinking that was a well-kept home. Why? Because respectability isn't a product purchased at the store. It's something your home reveals. Environmental psychology has spent decades studying the relationship between people and the places they inhabit. Researchers consistently describe the home as far more than shelter. It becomes an expression of identity, security, belonging, and personal meaning. One particularly intriguing paper approached this question from 2 completely different disciplines. One researcher came from architecture and environmental design. The other had spent his career studying how animals organize territory, establish home bases, and structure the places they live. Together, they reviewed findings across dozens of previous studies involving both humans and animals. Their findings were significant because they were consistent. Whether observing birds, rats, bears, or people, living spaces gradually organize themselves around recurring patterns. Different areas begin serving different purposes, and objects start reflecting identity. Routines and maintenance become habitual. The home drastically exceeds simple protection from weather and instead becomes physical proof of how life is being lived. That may explain why respectability feels immediately recognizable. We're not just looking at furniture, we're looking for evidence of stewardship. Does this home appear structured by standards? Are things maintained? Have the needs of the owner as well as his visitors been anticipated? Can you recognize the thought beyond appearances? Respectable homes generally have answers to these questions, and that's the distinction. Luxury revolves around how much did this cost, while fashion will ask how recently was this purchased. Respectability is a focus on how has this been cared for. This is not a grocery list of grand gestures infused into a house, but small patterns that can be detected. Evidence that the occupant has accepted responsibility for the home they're privileged to occupy. The first piece of evidence is straightforward. A respectable home notices deterioration. Not a strive for perfection, but a response. Every home is going to age. The wood will dry out and the leather will soften. Painted walls will get scuffed and door hinges will become loose. Bulbs can only last so long before they eventually burn out. That's inevitable. The real question is how long these things will stay that way. Have you ever been to a gym where a piece of equipment begins to malfunction? The next day you see a note taped on the machine saying, "Sorry, out of order, soon to be repaired." The note remains there for months, and the machine becomes a useless waste of space. It shows a lack of attention and care from management. This happens in homes. The loose cabinet handle becomes permanent. You learn to ignore a chip in the trim. The porch light has been dark for so long that no one remembers when it stopped working. Nothing catastrophic has happened, but dozens of tiny acts of neglect have accumulated and the home begins communicating something its owner never intended. Not that they lack money, but they've stopped paying attention. A respectable home sends the opposite message, that deterioration doesn't go unnoticed for long because maintenance is part of living there. It's not really about repair, it's showing respect for the space by maintaining it. Solid wood isn't valuable just because it's expensive, and leather isn't admired simply because it looks attractive. These materials were made with the expectation that someone would keep caring for them. They have protocols of longevity if someone has the desire to follow them. Wood can be refinished, and leather will improve with conditioning. Any brass in the home develops character through polishing, and stone will also present itself best when kept up with. None of these materials were introduced into households for temporary ownership. All of it was made with continuity in mind. This leads back to distinction between expense and respectability. Luxury will reference how much it costs. Trend will point to how recently the items came out. But respectability will take notice of how the area has been kept. There's a clear difference between the three. A lot of people can purchase something attractive, but far fewer people are still caring for it 10 years later. If you'd like to strengthen this area of your home, start with one visible repair each month. Walk through each room and see if there is anything you've learned to ignore. A loose cabinet handle, or a scratched piece of furniture, peeling caulk around a sink, a scuffed baseboard, a sticky door, or just a burned out bulb. Choose one or two of them, repair them, then repeat the process next month. A couple repairs every month creates a home that feels actively cared for instead of slowly moving toward abandonment. Secondly, you can establish simple maintenance routines for materials you already own. Condition the leather and oil the wood furniture. Polish the brass. Find a vacuum for the upholstered furniture, and put some care into any stone using the products that were designed for it. Ultimately, we're trying to create visible evidence that our home isn't simply occupied, but actively cared for. The sign of a respectable home is not that nothing ever wears out. It's that someone actually notices when it does. The second piece of evidence is readiness. In other words, preparation. A respectable home appears ready for ordinary life before life requests that readiness. Walk into many homes and you'll find striking furniture with nowhere comfortable to set down a drink, an elegant entry with nowhere to hang a coat, maybe a guest bathroom without clean hand towels, or a bedroom without a reading light. Is anything broken? No. But everything suggests that the home was designed to be admired more than it was designed to support daily life. Respectable homes do a good job at being ready for people. Someone steps through the front door and instinctively knows how to move forward, where to leave their shoes or toss their hat. This doesn't happen by accident. It reflects a homeowner who imagined another person's experience before they arrived. One study that examined domestic environments was published by Dr. Kuznetsova, who focuses in psychophysiology, and Dr. Nartova Bashaver, a chief researcher at the National Research University in Moscow. They identified two qualities that consistently shaped people's experience of home. The first was functionality. Does the home support the activities expected of it? The second was relevance. Do those functions actually match the lives being lived there? Interestingly, relevance proved even more psychologically significant than functionality alone. A home wasn't considered successful simply because it contained every amenity imaginable. It succeeded because it supported the people who lived inside it. That leads to one of the most practical definitions of respectability: a home which hasn't been equipped according to a fantasy lifestyle, but according to responsibility. Someone who never hosts formal dinners doesn't need a 12-seat dining room just to appear accomplished. However, someone who regularly welcomes friends and families should probably have comfortable seating, good lighting, clean glassware, a place for coats, an extra blanket, or a reading lamp beside the guest bed. Notice what all of those objects have in common. None of them exist to impress in the shallow sense. They exist to care for someone else. Some of the most respectable objects in any home may also be the least glamorous. A luggage rack, a waste basket in the guest bathroom, a flashlight that can easily be found, candles ready if the power goes out, a chair chosen for comfort in addition to appearance. Those things aren't particularly exciting, but they're deeply thoughtful, and thoughtfulness usually leaves a stronger impression than extravagance. It communicates we were expecting you and we planned ahead of time. On a greater scale, that could be considered a defining characteristic of civilization, the ability to imagine needs beyond one's own. Your home is your miniature civilization. For a bit of improvement here, start with your entrance. What does someone need during the first 30 seconds inside your home? Usually the answers aren't complicated. It might be a clear path and good lighting, somewhere for shoes or gloves if it's winter. All in all, a put-together, organized entrance. That's going to set the tone for everything that follows. Secondly, prepare your guest bathroom as though someone unexpected might use it tonight. Clean hand towels and soap readily available, toilet paper, a trash basket, good lighting, and a pleasant scent. This way, your guests never have to ask where the necessities are. The third piece of evidence concerns the rooms hardly anyone sees. The greater portion of us work tirelessly on spaces like our living rooms and trying to make our entries look good. It might be last minute, but we'll rush to get the dining room put together and presentable if it's about to be used. We're improving the spaces that our guests are likely to experience. Then they walk upstairs to a bedroom that has become a storage room. Clothes thrown in different directions as if a tornado had come through. The nightstands look like they were sourced from different ends of the earth. The $10 mass-produced floor lamps illuminate the ceiling like the sun, while everything eye level feels like a cave. What a contradiction to experience. The public rooms downstairs communicate pride, while the private rooms suggest neglect. What does that reveal? Perhaps that we've started tailoring for approval instead of for ourselves. A respectable home reverses that hierarchy. An area like the bedroom doesn't have to be luxurious, but you yourself still come into contact with it every day, and it should share the same values as everything else you surround yourself with. Environmental studies have long argued that our homes influence far more than appearances. They shape routine, identity, security, even emotional well-being. If that's true, then the rooms where we begin and end every day deserve just as much care as the rooms visited a few times a year. Think about the regular occurrences that happen there. Getting dressed, reading before bed, planning tomorrow, drinking your morning coffee, preparing for an important meeting, or reflecting after a difficult day. Those moments in time are not out of the ordinary events, but they are constant and recurring. So why shouldn't the rooms surrounding these daily rituals also be treated as important? One observation resurfaces when studying respectable homes. They don't reserve dignity for company. It extends into daily living that may only be spent with immediate family or alone. The owner believes his experience is worthy of care. Again, it's not that it needs extravagance, just a bit of consideration. It's a different philosophy from prestige. Prestige is aiming to improve what everyone else will notice, while self-respect is improving what you're going to encounter every single day. These private standards usually make their way into public visibility anyways, because people who care for the unseen parts of their homes almost always care for the visible parts as well. If this is an area you want to work on, you can try finishing your bedroom before beginning another project. Complete it with proper bedside lighting, nightstands, quality bedding, artwork, window treatments, perhaps a comfortable reading chair if the space in your room will allow it. Think of it more as a destination rather than just a place to sleep. Secondly, create one intentional place for a daily ritual. Some ideas could be a reading chair, a coffee corner, a place to write or notate ideas, or a spot for an evening whiskey. Whatever habit matters to you, give it a physical home. The fourth piece of evidence is continuity. By continuity, I mean a continuous work occurring over time. Every respectable home contains proof that life has happened there, not just purchases, but history. Walk through enough newly decorated homes and, more than likely, you'll notice everything feels recent. The furniture, accessories, and artwork are all new. Even the books look as though they arrived same day from Amazon. In terms of mere decorating, nothing is wrong. Plenty of people would use the phrase beautiful room. But it also feels strangely interchangeable, as though every object could disappear tomorrow and nothing of personal value or connection would disappear with it. Homes with continuity feel unique. They carry evidence that time has passed there. Where might this message come across? Maybe an old leather chair that's grown in character with its age, or a bookshelf filled with volumes that have clearly been read, a piece that has been passed down through generations of the family, framed photographs of mentors, relatives, or close friends. These are all just examples. What you use in your own home is going to pertain to your life. Military service, travel, work, achievement, it will all carry the same impact. Our rooms and homes do contain and display our memories, but over time, those very same rooms become part of our memories. Those remembrances locked into the vault of your mind aren't stored because of expensive decoration. They're remembered because they connect with your accumulated biography. Cosmetic decoration for the sake of decoration happens a lot in interior trend chasing. It's the copy the look mentality. But continuity infused into a room shows a documentation of life lived. That's why respectable homes aren't very trendy. That doesn't mean that they aren't attractive. It means that the core value system used to create a respectable room doesn't often match that of a room created through trend. Replacing everything too often erases the story of the house that has been accumulating over time. Now, your goal does not need to be to create a museum. You're just staying aware of preservation, the signs that someone has lived there, worked here, learned here, celebrated here, and recovered here. As the weeks, months, and years pass, those accumulated traces give the home something trends never can: character. So where can you start if you want to build a bit more continuity? Begin replacing emotionless decoration with personal biography. Display the objects that genuinely belong to your story. Family heirlooms, travel pieces with real significance, professional achievements, military service, or collections assembled over years. These are going to better reflect who the person is living inside the home. Then, when the time comes to buy something new, consider choosing one piece intended to remain with you for decades. A solid wood bookcase or a quality desk, a well-crafted upholstered chair, or a solid material dining table. Objects like these become more meaningful as time progresses, and they remain with you. Every mark becomes part of their history instead of a reason to replace them. That's one of the wonderful advantages of craftsmanship. Good materials anticipate long ownership. The final piece of evidence is restraint, knowing when enough is enough. This may be the hardest standard to practice because buying something new almost always feels productive, while removing something rarely does. Yet respectable homes understand an important truth. Every object occupies more than physical space. It also occupies attention. Your eyes don't know where to stop in overcrowded rooms. Paintings fighting with one another, the shelving looks like you're in the supermarket. There's too much asking to be noticed. The goal isn't to have your home be empty, but to have an understanding that collections and displays have boundaries. In the previous point, we talked about adding collections, but you don't want to end up creating a memorabilia store in your living room. If your front door was open, would someone mistakenly walk in thinking they had just found a thrift shop? Every object needs enough space to matter, and having the judgment to acknowledge when another item is going to weaken instead of strengthen the room will really help you in your quest to keep a respectable dwelling. Restraint is not only something that helps with aesthetics, but maintenance. Every book must eventually be dusted. Decorative objects are going to have to be cleaned, and furniture will have to be maintained at some point. The more we accumulate, the more time commitment and responsibility we add to our plates. If you'd like to try to pursue a bit of restraint, try starting with the accessories in your home. Walk through each room and ask yourself, if I remove this, would the room become weaker? Would I even notice it was gone? If the answer is no, remove it. After you've done that, give every collection a defined boundary, a section of sorts, a single display cabinet, or one bookshelf or one wall. Boundaries will help force careful editing and help prevent the kind of accumulation that eventually becomes clutter. Respectability isn't something you decorate into a home. It's something that you practice, where anticipation takes priority over improvisation, where the private rooms receive the same amount of attention as the public ones, a house that reflects the life of the person living there, but doesn't do it in an excessive way. These are things that anyone can do in their home. You just have to be aware of them. If you like the video, hit the thumbs up. If you feel like sticking around a while, feel free to subscribe. See you in the next one.